Hi there, it's me again. This is my learning teaching interaction number two. So over the last 3 weeks, I've learned quite a bit, especially with the evaluation process. I didn't know how much actually went into evaluations until like we did the reading and then also working with my partner for our workshop of how we're going um, to assess, how we do. Because I mean, if you just ask ourselves, then we can say, I felt like it went pretty well, or I felt like I could have done better in these areas. But actually asking the participants to answer particular questions is so vital. I took a statistics class, and something that they mentioned was the way that you word the questions is very important, because you don't want to ask the questions in such a way that you're prompting the person who's taking the evaluation or the survey to answer in a specific way. And so I thought that was helpful as we were working on formulating the questions that we were going to ask, and also asking questions that they could like rate 1 to 10, but then also asking more questions that they could fill in. So if they had any personal thoughts, they could have a little bit more flexibility. So I guess just balancing that flexibility and that structure was interesting. And then also there's just, like I said, a lot more in that evaluation process than I anticipated. One thing that I really appreciated from the reading in that was the definition of objectives, and that those are specific aspects within the design of the program that lead us to really consider and contemplate on two different aspects of what our program will do. It mentioned the difference between outcomes and impacts. Outcomes are immediate effects that occur because of the workshop or the FLE that we are giving, while the impacts are the long-term effects. And so I thought that was really interesting and helpful for me as I reviewed the workshop lessons, where as I was able to ask myself, what are the immediate effects that I want to happen within the participants who come to our workshop, and what are some of the impacts, the long-term effects that I hope to see or hope to teach, and how can I evaluate that? How can I help the participants understand that and be able to convey if we were actually beneficial, if we were helpful at all. So I thought that was really interesting. I kind of wanted to focus a little bit more on the need of ethical guidance. However, I really liked that reading that we were able to do and working with the case studies. That was actually maybe part of my favorite semester, or part of my favorite part of the semester so far. I really thought that it was good to know, good to be reminded, I guess, that good intentions are not enough. Um, it's not enough to want to do the right thing. We need to also know how to do the right thing. I had a personal experience with this in high school. I worked at a greenhouse, and it was a really fun job, and I loved it. But there was one day that I witnessed some family turmoil, and the boyfriend actually took the child away from the child's mom and took off, and like broke the mom's phone so she couldn't call anybody, and like it was bad. It was definitely some family turmoil. And what I learned was that my good intentions of helping were not enough. I acted. I went and I got the mom. I got her phone. Was able to help her call. Boyfriend came back. Everybody was crying, and it was kind of a mess. And they made up and they left. And for the rest of the day, I didn't know what I should have done. I really didn't know. I was really inexperienced as a teenager, naive, the whole thing. But then talking with my boss, we were pretty close. But I was talking with my boss, and he just let me know, that as I grow and as I get older, that I'll have experiences like that where I won't know what to do, and we just have to do our best. But it's better to be educated and to respond in the ways that we can. And so as we become family life educators, that's our responsibility, is to know what to do in those situations, to know to who to report family abuse and things like that, or even suspicions that we have when it comes to those kinds of things. And so not only do we need to know who to report those things, but we also need to understand and to be very familiar with the community resources that we have, so that we can we can use those things and direct the people to where they need to go. For example, what we were talking about this week with our learning was we were learning about the difference between family therapists and family life education. And when families need therapy, then it's no longer within our sphere of responsibility, and it's important that we know how to direct those people who need extra help to those more beneficial spheres, and so that we're able to see and recognize and then know what to do with what we're seeing. And so that comes with experience. But as we learn and as we do activities like we did last week with the case studies, and as we review the ethical guidance worksheet that we had, I think that we'll be able to work in beneficial ways, especially as we follow the Spirit. Also, I wanted to touch base a little bit on the need for us to make prior decisions of how we're going to react. And that's the importance of like the case study last week. And in a parenting class that I took, it was really interesting. They told us that it's important that as husband and wife, as spouses, as parents, we need to go through different scenarios in our minds so that when it comes right down to it, that we're able to not react to the situation, but we're able to act and know what we want to do. We won't be able to plan for everything, but as we role play and as we work on case studies like we did last week, we'll be able to be better prepared for the future, so we won't be fumbling, I guess. We'll have a plan of action and we'll be able to act. I really liked a quote from the reading last week when it said that the age of innocence has passed, and this is what it is with us, especially within the field that we're going into. As students, we are no longer ignorant. We have the responsibility to act in beneficial ways, and we have been shown that ethical guidance, and we need to make sure that we follow it, because in the past our responsibility was to learn, but now as we're furthering in our education and as we're getting close to graduation and working, it becomes our responsibility is no longer to learn, but it is now to apply what we have learned in a responsible way. I also thought that it was so crucial when it mentioned that our words have weight. People will come to look to us to have answers. At least that's what we hope, so that we can help teach and educate. But we need to have the Spirit with us so that we can share correct principles tactfully. Because if we present material in an offensive way, then we're just going to do more damage than good. But we also need to make sure that we're not only sharing material in a positive way, but we're sharing correct principles. And for example, with the case study 2, with making the wrong move, the father could pull the family away, and then we would lose all of our influence with that family. And so it's really important that we are using our words, and we're choosing our words carefully, and we're following the Spirit, because that's really how we're going to be able to function with our goals as a family life educator, is to follow the guidance of the Spirit, because as we're living right, we'll be able to be prompted to help others and serve others in the best way possible. Also, I thought it was really interesting when it talked about the importance of working together as the FLE group. It's okay to not have the answers. This is something that I've been learning a lot this semester. And when we don't have the answers, it's important that we seek counsel from reliable sources. I also had a high school experience with this, where I didn't know what to do with a friend. A friend had come to me with a problem that they had been having, and I didn't know what to do. But as I looked to others, and as I was able to talk to those who were more experienced, or who had more experience in that area than I did, then I was able to reach out and help. And it's really important to remain or to keep that confidentiality up when we're discussing things as we collaborate to help others, because when you break that confidentiality, even though it may not seem like the person will ever find out, they do most often. I found there was, like with my high school experience, there was a person who had broken that confidentiality, and it went back to the person who was really struggling, and they didn't know. They were talking directly to the person who was really struggling, and they didn't know. And that's the thing that we really need to understand, is that when we're collaborating and when we're trying to work together to find answers and to seek counsel from each other, we have to carry each of those stories as if they were the person that we were talking to, and we need to treat it with that sort of respect and confidentiality. I also wanted to talk briefly about the need to act promptly, but that doesn't mean immediately. It's okay if we say, you know, I don't know, let me find out, or if we aren't sure how to react to a certain situation that happens during the workshop or FLE, that we take a moment to pause. We don't have to immediately respond to a question or a scenario. It's okay to take a moment and reflect and really think and ponder before we react. That way we're acting instead of reacting again. I also really appreciated this week's reading with the therapy versus the education. I appreciate that they mentioned that it is related, but that they are distinct, different careers. I really like the first reading when it talked about level 3, which had the definition that as FLEs, we listen empathetically, we probe gently for feelings and personal stories, we create an open and supportive group climate, engage in a collaborative problem solving, and tailor recommendations to the specific situation. Now, I understand that the first reading that we had some difficulties with the definition, but with that little portion, I thought that really captured what I hope to do as a FLE, was to really, especially when it talked about the create an open, supportive group climate, I thought that was really important. But then I just wanted to end with a quote from the second reading, as it talked about the difference between FLE and family therapy. I really thought this was profound when it said that the FLE tailors its methods to what is known about the population, concentrating on the strengths of the targeted families and attempting to empower them, enrich their knowledge and skill levels, and build more positive attitudes and aspirations. I thought that was really helpful for me as I prepared to do my first workshop this week. That helps me keep in mind what my goals are, and that really what I'm trying to do is exactly that, is concentrate on the strengths and attempt to empower. And so that's my goal this week, and I just wanted to leave these thoughts with you, and I hope that it was beneficial. Please leave some comments below.